With the new Formula One regulations catching a lot of eyeballs outside the sport, companies like Andretti Autosport are vying to become the 11th team on the grid. They seem to have ruffled some feathers though, as the Mercedes boss has criticized their credibility. But of course, F1 legend Mario Andretti wasn't just gonna sit back and watch. So is there drama stirring between Wolff and Andretti already? Well, let's dive straight in and discuss. First up, Andretti Autosport has launched a serious bid for F1 entry. Before we get into the drama between Toto Wolff and Mario Andretti, we need to understand the root cause of this clash in the first place. You see, over the past few months, Michael Andretti's been meeting people in the paddock to try and convince them for a Formula One entry. For context, he's the son of former F1 champ and legend Mario Andretti, and owns Andretti Autosport, which is a pretty prolific team in other motorsports categories like IndyCar. Now, it seems like they've got a solid plan of how they're gonna operate within the sport, including the financial side of things. In fact, they've even been talking to the FIA and Liberty Media in an official capacity. And judging from their actions, they seem pretty serious about the whole thing. But there seems to be a slight issue. No other team wants to share a piece of that pie. Next, Toto Wolff doesn't like the idea of an 11th F1 team. The thing is, Formula One has had 10 teams for just a long time that everyone's kind of used to sharing the prize pool among themselves. However, the prospect of adding another team doesn't sit well with anyone because, well, the prize money doesn't grow in proportion. So in theory, everyone will just end up getting a smaller cut instead. Now, Formula One does have a measure in place to partially mitigate this called the Prize Dilution Fund. Plus, essentially this acts as an entry fee that goes straight to the other teams, meaning that they don't actually lose much money, at least during the first year. With that said, teams like Mercedes and Red Bull still aren't convinced that this is the right way forward because unless we see a significant increase in the prize pool, they're still losing out on potential winnings in the long run. Oh, and it's not like they've not been vocal. In fact, Mercedes boss Toto Wolff even took a jab at Andretti Autosport and questioned whether they even had the legs to support themselves in Formula One. After all, no one wants to see a repeat of situations like Benetton at the turn of the century or, more recently, Force India. The Austrian also said that Andretti needs to demonstrate what it can do for other teams and for the sport as a whole. According to him, it's not solely about money either, because then anyone who would be able to walk in without restrictions. So the FIA and Liberty Media need to inspect any new entrants in great detail and make sure they're fit enough for the role. Red Bull boss Christian Horner, on the other hand, was much more straightforward. According to him, the prize pool dilution is the biggest issue with bringing a new team on board, and the FIA needs to fix that before letting anyone onto the ship. And now Mario Andretti responds to Wolff's criticism. If you've ever had a chance to witness Mario Andretti during his racing years with Lotus, you'd know how much of a fierce competitor he is. So when Toto Wolff was taking shots at his son's team, we were always bound to see some pushback from him. And that's exactly what we got, as the 82-year-old slammed Wolff for criticizing his team's credibility. According to him, the public criticism from the Mercedes boss was very disrespectful. Andretti also didn't miss the opportunity to remind Toto that his team's been active in motorsport for much longer than he has, which is why there's no reason for the Austrian to look down on them. On top of that, he also asked everyone in the paddock to stop assuming their financial position and expertise. On the financial side, we have credible partners who are aware of the size of the project. We've been planning on our program for a long time because it's all we want. We deserve more respect, said the former Lotus driver. The former F1 champ also addressed concerns about the team's seriousness, saying that they've been in talks with the FIA and that they've fulfilled all the requirements. The only thing left now is feedback for the actual cost estimations. It's not easy to convince Liberty Media. Now, Michael Andretti's been running around the paddock week in, week out, trying to convince the FIA to let his team into the sport, and according to him, things are actually going pretty well, as he's established a good relationship with the association's president, Mohammed bin Sulayem. Also, it seems like they've met all the necessary requirements. It's only a matter of hiring people and injecting cash into their plans. However, that's where things get a little more tricky for Andretti. Reportedly, Liberty Media isn't fully on board with the FIA's intentions, as they've been hesitant to add teams into the sport for a long time. In fact, Ross Brawn has even come out and said that F1 is is currently a pretty good place, and that they don't need to make any drastic changes until at least 2026. So it seems like the job's not fully done for Andretti. With that said, there's also some trouble brewing between the media conglomerate and Mario Andretti, as the former F1 champ has criticized the company for giving too much freedom to the teams. Speaking in an interview with Autosport, the 82-year-old said that Toto Wolff would have never spoken out like this if we were still in the Bernie Ecclestone era. Plus, the teams just have way too much financial power these days, which is never a good sign for the integrity of any sport. Why are other teams looking to get into F1? Alright, so what's the deal with Andretti Autosport, and why are they so adamant about joining Formula One in the first place? Well, it comes down to a couple of things. You see, over the past few years, Formula One's expanded a lot as a sport thanks to the Netflix Drive to Survive series and a much-needed change in regulations. Everything from the cars to the financial model is new. Besides, it seems like the sport is definitely heading in the correct direction. Like, the FIA has even managed to solve the age-old issue of turbulent air by introducing ground effect cars. So, not only do we have better racing as a result, but the grid's also seen a bit of a shakeup. But of course, that's just a small part of Liberty Media's much bigger strategy. In fact, we'd go even as far as to say that the real changes are being done off the racetrack. For instance, the new budget caps are massive for the sport. Why? Well, for starters, they limit big teams like Ferrari and Mercedes who outspend the rest of the grid to just make their car faster. As a result, they'll have to find efficient ways to get a creative solution. On top of that, smaller teams also finally have a chance to compete, as the budget cap makes sure that they're able to develop a car that doesn't lag too far behind the top teams. Also, the grid has kind of bunched up. Now, for this very reason, there's never been a better time to enter Formula One. Not only is the cost the lowest it's been in decades, but the chances of a new entrant being competitive are also much higher. Plus, judging by Andretti's approach, it seems like they've always wanted to get into F1 because, well, their name's kind of got an affinity with the sport. So it makes perfect sense for them to capitalize on that and build upon their already decorated legacy. Now, Andretti isn't the only one looking to enter F1. It seems like all the talk over the past few months has been about Andretti Autosport's potential entry into Formula One. However, you'd be surprised to learn that there are actually much bigger names who've already confirmed their interest to make their way into the sport in 2026. And perhaps the biggest of them all is Porsche. According to reports, the German car manufacturer intends to enter the sport with an existing team, kind of like how Honda worked with Red Bull as an engine manufacturer. So maybe we could see that situation, or alternatively, it could just end up being similar to Aston Martin, where it's more about the name than the actual car. That's not all though, as Porsche's sister company Audi has also expressed its interest in the sport after the new engine regulations came into play. Plus, apparently, they're trying to go all in and start a team from scratch. Now, whether they team up with someone else to launch a joint effort or go solo by themselves remains to be seen. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think that we'll see a Porsche or Audi race in Formula One as their own teams by 2026? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.